So this has been a continuous question of all my students throughout, that how do we do the test analysis? Like after any particular exam, how do I come to know whether whatever I have scored, was this the maximum that I could have scored, or there was a better scope? With the same knowledge, same level of practice, in the same exam, maybe on the same day, could I have done much better? So in order to do, or in order to give it a more logical shape and more workable model, I am bringing this test analysis after a lot of requests from students. Test analysis the smart way. We would answer these two questions here. Could I have done better in this, in the same paper? And during a paper, how do I judge my optimum potential? Is it practically possible that I come to know, okay, I should not attempt these questions and I should go ahead with these and all? So what I have done is, I have first, let me take the first part, that is after the exam, how do I do the post-mortem of it, and how do I analyze whether I could have done better or not. Essentially, in any particular exam, to attempt any question, you require two ingredients, and those two are basically knowledge and practice. Now, looking at a particular question immediately during the exam, or maybe after the exam, if you are doing analysis, you come to know, okay, this particular question, I had the knowledge. By knowledge, I mean I know what the question asked for, I have understood the question properly, and I have done ample number of questions as a practice earlier. Let me categorize all those questions as category A. So what you are supposed to do immediately the paper is over, come back home without wasting much of your time, write this ABCD tags against each question in the paper. So if there is a question which you look at and you realize, okay, this I knew very well what it is asking, I have understood, I had the knowledge, and I have done ample practice, call it a code A. There could be a question where you have done the understanding part well. When the question was there, you read it, you understood it very well, but you never had done too much of practice, and hence there were some fumbles. Call all such questions as category B. There could be some questions where you had done enough practice earlier, but when it was taught or when it was dealt in the class, you probably never had that knowledge, that understanding with you. So let us call all that is questions as category C. There could be some of them which basically fall in category C, where I have done many questions, but then also I couldn't understand how to do, and today also I couldn't understand how to do. And of course, this is a misprint. There would be questions which basically would be D category. Neither I have any understanding, nor I have done any practice kind of thing. Once after the paper you have named all of them A, B, C, D category, start collecting marks. So what will happen is, probably after a paper you realize that a particular question category of A together sums up to, say, in a paper of 100 some 60 marks. I'm taking an example. Another category B for a particular paper, you realize it is 20 marks, and then 10 marks of C, and then 10 marks of D. So what I say, and this is for particularly for those who are preparing for IIT, JEE and all, I have given a multiplying factor from my side. I assume all those questions which were easy, as in knowledge was there with you, practice you had done ample, you should have scored full marks into that because you have been preparing so hard. So the multiplying factor is 1. If it was a question of category B, then at least 70% of those questions you should have done correctly. That is your optimum. So that makes it 14 for this particular example. For the third one, I have considered it to be a 40% at least, even if you do not have understood thoroughly in your days, but you have done too many questions, so at least 40% of the questions you should have attempted it properly. So that makes it 4. Here I don't expect anything. So this gives you your score, that this is what you should have defended in this particular paper. This is what you should have gone for, which is nothing but 78 in this particular example. So for every particular scenario, you can get a score which is to be defended during the exam. And this basically becomes the basis that could I have done better. If you have scored 78 in this particular paper out of 100, basis what I've just discussed as an example, this is your optimum. Next, if you want to improve, definitely you have to improve your knowledge, your problem practice and all. But as an examination temperament, how to optimize your score, this is there. Yes, tomorrow if it is a different exam, maybe you are dealing with some other exam, say for example, you have come up with NTSE, not like IIT JEE. So these multiplying factors would change. Of a student of class 10th, I don't expect that all the questions that you know would be able to do thoroughly. Although NTSE is a very high scoring exam, but not in all the regions, in Delhi and few regions. So in that case, you can write to me in the comment box. I can give you a different multiplying factor based on my experience if I have in that particular exam. Or you may go back to your mentors and ask them that I need a multiplying factor as in how much should I take as a complete score in these categories, explaining them the categories if I am the student or if this is the exam. So this is the analysis that students have asked for and you should do after every exam so as to you have a score in front of you that maybe you have scored 72 out of your target score 78, nothing to worry. But if you have scored 32 out of 78, then there is something which you need to amend immediately, and that's not your subject knowledge, that's not your problem practice, that's your examination temperament. How do you write an exam? Moving further, there was this question that how do we prioritize during the exams which question to do first and which to do second? Should it be subject wise? Should it be like level of difficulty wise? So I have come up with something which I hope works very well for you. Again, the same thing. While you are attempting a paper, while you are going through the questions, in your mind, by looking, by with a glance at the question, you would come to know whether the question is A, B, C, D for you. And if you do it on a daily basis, this would become a habit. For the questions which are category A for you, you have the knowledge, you have done the practice. Irrespective there is negative marking or no negative marking in those questions, you should attempt them then and there as your priority one. The only thing is for negative marking questions, you may mark for review if that is an option. Nowadays, these options are available with almost every exam that you can mark for review and come back later and see whether it has to be done or not. But if there is an element of doubt, in my opinion, and you have to mark it for review, then essentially it's not a A type question. Coming to B, if you have the knowledge and you have not done practice, I would say your priority still remains to be 2 for all these 3 questions because there is no negative marking. And take my word, if you have studied thoroughly, you would be busy throughout the paper. You would not get second chance to come back in these questions and you miss out. There was no negative marking. Why didn't I basically take these questions? I could have done these things then and there. So my suggestion is while you go ahead, wherever there is no negative marking, you do your work, whatever you feel best, go ahead. Don't touch these questions at all. Coming back to these, I would recommend if you have the knowledge, then keep this as priority 3 because the knowledge would definitely give you an option to reject among the options. So you may not probably put in the wrong option and very selectively among these. So this becomes irrespective of negative and negative, without negative your first choice. Then continue writing the exam. But the moment you see that there is no negative marking, whatever is your gut feeling, whatever you have done, put the mark, the answer and come back. No need to do any mark for review and all. There would be few mark for review in these cases and of course in these 2 cases. Last 10 minutes, go through them, mark all those which you are confident and remove all those which you are not and you are done. But if you don't go ahead with these non-negative marking questions in a flow, you don't generally get the second chance to do. So this is how we do, and take my word, I had been sharing this with students of mine for last 20 years. And if you start doing it in your daily test practice test at home, very soon this becomes your habit, and during the exam you would be able to categorize abcd in your mind. You would come to a picture, okay, probably I would get somewhat this in the paper. Once you are done, come out of the paper. There is a very important point that I would like to bring about here, that once the exam is over, don't simply suddenly feel relaxed and start moving here and there. That is the time when your subconscious mind is at the top of its gear. So you need to utilize those 15, 20 minutes, 1 hour, or 1 day to amend. First few things that you should take a note of immediately, preferably immediately after the exam, you come home, same day probably. Try to recall when you were at your best, the time slot in the very first questions, first 15, 20, 30 minutes, or the last 20, 30, and try to make a habit of noting it down after every paper. Maybe after some paper you find a pattern, then in last 20 minutes I become jittery. Or maybe in first 15 minutes I'm over enthusiastic and I do questions incorrectly. Number one. Number two, assign error codes to the questions attempted incorrectly or you couldn't attempt. Immediately, I couldn't attempt 7 questions and I attempted 6 questions incorrectly. So that means for those 13 questions, I should have make your own error codes. Like it was a silly mistake, calculation mistake, call it S. I didn't knew the concept, call it B. I misread the question, call it C. You can have your own error codes, but primarily either it is a silly mistake, calculation error, or you didn't knew the concept at all, or maybe you misread the question and did something else, somewhat like that. So make a habit of this so that you collect all those after a few exams and then identify what are your error prone areas. Take my word, the best judgment of your error code will have immediately after the exam. After 2, 3, 4 days, you would just be forming your own perception about them, and it is not something which it should be. So two important things to do immediately after the exam: assign error codes and take a time slot when you were at your best. What was the time when you were doing inflow? Which few questions did it put you off? There are instances, one particular question, I read the question, sometimes I'm emotionally attached to a question. My teacher has done so much work with that question, or maybe whatever be the reason, you know it better. But there are questions, if you don't know the solution to that question, then you remain blank for few minutes, 4, 5, 6, 7 minutes, and it actually spoils your entire rhythm of attempting the paper. Just identify them. You can't do anything about them because this is basically your psychological this thing, but just identify them. Come home, share this with your mentors. If, sir or ma'am, this is what happened today. The moment I saw this question, I got blank for a few minutes. I don't know what. So you have to share. They would be the person best judge to get back that this is why it happened, because they have done the working all through the year with you. Then, of course, after every paper, do the ABCD analysis, preferably on the same day, so that it happens. And on the same very day, write down some rules and resolutions to improve before the next attempt. You had made this particular silly mistake. Take a piece of paper, chart paper, or a A4 size sheet, write it in black and white that this is what I'll not do. Paste it in the study wall or table of yours. I know this sounds very childish to do all those things, but during the exam, it's not only your intellect that drives your score, it is your subconscious mind, which often is driven by such activities that drives your score. So, if you make resolutions, if you improve your rules, write it on a table, on a piece of paper, put it in front of you, keep it there, look at it daily, your subconscious mind gets alert. Okay, I have promised myself not to do. Make it a habit of doing it. Take my word, you would improve till date, people like me, after so many years, are improving on this only by this activity. What is more important to understand, that your performance in any exam, the best that you can get out of an exam, is basically this confidence of yours is the key to success. This is the intensity. The more it is, the better would be the shine here. Of course, knowledge, practice, your intellect, and your attitude, how you perform, how you behave, how you create these things, are these are your play areas which you would do, but I give maximum weightage to confidence. And of course, confidence is an outcome of all these things. If these are in place, you are confident. The intensity is this, the test analysis, people like me, the study system that you follow, we play a role of converging lens. That's our role, nothing more than that. So whatever you do, all that converges and gives you shining career here. If at all you really want to experience whatever I had said, do one thing, go and teach these tactics to somebody. This mirror of life is that if you want to learn something, the best way is teach it to somebody. So the moment you start preaching and teaching about test analysis to your colleagues, to your juniors, you would realize where you went wrong. Because when you preach, your subconscious mind, your heart, all are in sync. So then you basically would be knowing what best you could have done, and next time you don't need probably any resolutions to improve. You would basically improve on your own because you have taught somebody on this thing. So these are my advices to all of you after every exam. If you keep on doing this, take my word, after some time you would improve your performance. Of course, to improve the knowledge you have to study, to improve the practice you have to do a lot of problem. Intellect improves over a period of time, not on a day. To improve your attitude, you have to just decide. But to have a perfect outcome of all of these, you will have to get into the right temperament of writing exam. It is an art more than science. Best of luck.